The Cat's Whiskers podcast is proudly sponsored by the Bunkers Hill Hockley. Don't miss Panthers game day offers, including Coors Light at £2.50 a pint.
Good evening. It's Monday the 19th of March. It's 8:45. We're almost at the end of the regular season, and this is the Cat's Whiskers podcast live. Yes, good evening. My name is Ant. It is Monday's version of the Cat's Whiskers podcast, which on a normal regular season day means we're reviewing the games that have gone past over the weekend, and obviously we had a game last week as well, although from the outside looking in, it looks more like an open training session. Joining me in my Matrix pub of chat tonight, I have the First Lady of the Cat's Whiskers, Miss Tina Taylor.
Hiya.
And the grumpy old man himself, Mr. Paul Balm.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, you miserable git. Yeah. All right. So we'll crack on. Obviously, with 3 games to talk about first before we go into the plans for the weekend. First of all, last weekend's open training session, a demolition job again of the Edinburgh Capitals. I'm not going to go through the scorers because there were lots. Panthers running out 12-1 winners. Guys, and Paul, I'll come to you first while Tina's doing tippy-tappy stuff in the background. Bit of a daft scoreline, really. Could you see anything different happening?
No, not really. To be honest, I mean, Edinburgh arrived. I think they'd got 3, maybe 4 players they'd picked up literally along the way from the Sheffield Senators, I think it was, and we barely got out of first gear all night. It was painful, frankly. I mean, obviously, you know, it's all right me sitting here saying it was painful. We weren't on the end of a 12-1 drubbing. But I think, I mean, take nothing away, you know, whatever we say when we're talking about this game, take nothing away from those Edinburgh and Sheffield players. They gave everything. You know, you could see them trying. You could see almost at the start of the game when the anthems finished, our players sped away. They were circling the goal. Edinburgh's just turned round and skated towards the goal. They looked beaten before we got there, and I think. We could have had 20 if we'd have tried in the third period. Because I honestly think, apart from Delego scored in the third, it was almost like we were shooting to miss, just so it wasn't any worse than it was already.
I mean, this is the second thumping that we've given Caps in a row, Tina. How much longer can it continue?
Another week. No, I'm kidding.
You're open, aren't you?
How much longer? You know, it's really funny. We say this. How many years? You know, how many years have we been talking about this? And you know, the situation with the Edinburgh Capitals, and you know how I'm sure we've even asked that very question, and you know, we all sort of scratch our heads, and you know, we fail to see how they can continue. I mean, this feels a lot worse than it has done in previous years, but it's still the same conversation. You know, we've come to the end of the season, and players have departed left, right, and centre from the Capitals team for, you know, reasons we can only speculate on, but you know, probably not any different to, you know, reasons that have, you know, been the same for, you know, past seasons. It's farcical, and there's the the cliche phrase, "You're only as strong as your weakest member," and with the best will in the world, Caps are it. Caps are the weakest member, and they are the weakest member pretty much every year, and have been for as long as I've been supporting the Panthers. I can always remember that Edinburgh, aside from when we lost to them in the middle of our league winning season, I can always remember them sort of being the whipping boys, as it were. At least at the back end of the season, certainly. And I look at it and you just hang your head and you just shake your head and just go, I haven't got an answer. Genuinely don't have an answer. But one thing I just want to pick up on that Paul just said. At times it was like we were shooting to miss. I said that to the gang around me. I think it was when we were something like 6-0 up, and I said we've just taken our foot off the gas now. We're looking like we don't actually want to score any more against them, and without trying, we did.
I mean, one of the positives, I suppose, is that our under-21s got plenty of ice time. Jordan Kelsall made his first Panthers appearance since suffering a horrible injury earlier on in the season, and bagged his first 2 goals of the game, Paul. So that's surely got to be something good that's come out of the game.
Well, yeah, I mean, but if they're not going to get ice time in a game like that, when are they? When are they going to, in effect? I mean, and hopefully, obviously we'll get on to the weekend's games later. But, I'd be looking to have that, if they're available, have that happening again, because you improve by getting experience, by getting ice time at a higher level, and, well, he's never going to have an easier introduction than that. Will clearly he'll never have another introduction, but there's it was the perfect game thing, and he did really well. He was going to the right places. He was he was taking the puck well. I mean, as well as Kelsall, I've been impressed by how well Tetlow moves the puck. He's got an eye for an up ice pass, Tetlow, that we've seen once or twice. But I mean, I think the thing that out the whole game, just going back to the whole sort of the game, was I knew Lacko, when he scored the second, didn't bother celebrating. I didn't realise that Mokshansev, when he scored the first, didn't. And that says everything. I think that says how much we expected to go in and win, and what we as a team thought of the whole situation.
I mean, one final thing before we move on. Obviously, it was a low attendance, so we've talked about the Caps' troubles, God knows how long. But that's probably another thing, isn't it, guys? That obviously these games, they're probably costing clubs money now as well, because fans just don't want to turn up and watch one-sided drubbing. Yeah,
I know of quite a few people who didn't bother going. One not so far away from the conversation right now, and I considered it as well. I have to say, I mean, what's the point? What is the point? I mean, early on in the season, you don't quite know what you're going to get from a Caps team. They can be fantastic and come out with lots of vigor, or they can have a slow start because chances are they haven't got all their imports in yet, and blah 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 and the rest of it. But at this end of the season, given the results that they've had and the fact that they've only had 5 wins all season, they're unlikely to travel south of the border and get a result, because as we well know, several of the Capitals players have jobs. They have day jobs outside of hockey, because the Caps can't sustain a full professional team. They can't provide the wages for their players to be fully, for all of their players to be fully professional. So a midweek game is going to be a depleted side. And I did have a joke. I did say, I wonder who they're going to borrow players from, and lo and behold, they did. But yeah, it's an interesting angle you present there, Ant, because obviously somebody, take us as the example, as we're discussing us. We have as far as I'm aware, there is a set amount that the Panthers hire the arena for, and whatever the ticket sales are, that has to be paid. So if you've got the Caps coming down, and everybody knows the game is practically a foregone conclusion, and people aren't going to turn up, then had I not had a season ticket, I probably wouldn't have gone. So, and I can imagine a lot of non-season ticket holders would have felt like that. I mean, those are the ones that matter in this sort of scenario, because as season ticket holders, Panthers have already got our money. So whether we go or not is irrelevant to sales. But somebody who hasn't got a season ticket, you'd have to question what your motivation was going to that game last week.
Yeah, I mean, that game, looking at that crowd and what I've been told in the past, whether it's right or wrong, I don't know, that wouldn't have been far above break even, really. And I have to say as well, and look, it was a Tuesday night, and Edinburgh aren't very good at all. But I think that's the first time since, I think it was Bracknell, might have been Basingstoke actually, in the old stadium, that a team played in Nottingham without any of their fans. And but like I say, we're talking about people from Nottingham not wanting to travel to Nottingham to watch it. You'd have to be some sort of fan to make the journey from Edinburgh. You'd probably end up getting a game if you had done, though, when you think about it. We jest. No, it's not good. Move on. Let's move on.
There we go. Paul Balm has just called out every Edinburgh Capitals supporter and called them not a real fan because they're in trouble. To Nottingham.
Oh, don't you get him in trouble. Don't you get him in trouble.
Let's not start the real fan nonsense. Okay, so moving on to slightly happier times. Game 123,528 of the season against the Sheffield Steelers. And it was a reverse of last weekend's when it was just basically a bit pish. And Panthers took a 3-0 lead before two goals in the second period. Third period, from the Steelers brought it to within one, but Panthers held on. And a starring performance from Patrick Galbraith means the Panthers take the final regular season meeting 3-2. Tina, we said this last week. Was it again a case of the battle of the two, who was least worse?
A little bit. I mean, both teams have underachieved domestically. I mean, we are perennial underachievers in the league, but even for us, this is a special kind of special, being seventh. And, fifth is definitely not good enough for the Steelers. But given some of the performances that we've seen from both teams against each other and against other teams, you can kind of see why. It's been a bit inconsistent from both sides. I think... I mean, I didn't see the game. I've only seen the highlights, but I think that I would say that last week we were very disorganised, and I would apply that statement to Sheffield more than us up in their barn on Saturday.
Those goals definitely.
Yeah,
the way Phillips is allowed to walk through.
Yeah.
And shoot. I mean, we all know our blessed leader, Jono, is I know, he's a fan of Mustakov's, but he can't. Well, he probably can actually. He'll have a go. Can't blame him for that one. Mustakov's had to make a move, because the defence weren't. The defence were just stood still as Phillips went through.
Yes. I mean, one thing I will say about that particular goal, though, is David Clark did a very good job in front of net, creating the chaos that allowed Phillips to have the space to go around and tap it in. So yeah, I think he did a really good job with that. I mean, Vasquez was possibly a little bit jammy because it could have, after it sort of went behind Mustakov's, it could have gone past the post. But yeah, go on.
But it didn't, you know.
No, it didn't. No, it didn't. And
you say, yeah, I mean, how many jammy goals have Sheffield scored against us? All of them, obviously. So you know, just sometimes the luck does run your way. Sometimes, I mean, too little, too late, obviously, but
yeah, I mean,
Sheffield, you're going to take it, aren't you?
Absolutely, and. You know, Mosey's goal was really well worked by Delego. He just waited and waited and waited and just found a little bit of space. And, you know, Mosey was in front of net and just did the job. So, you know, we had a little bit of luck that we have been lacking, but we also had a bit more organisation to us, I think, than we have possibly had in previous meetings. I mean... For me personally, going into that game on Saturday, I just didn't want Mustakovs to be gifted another shutout. After that, I was happy.
Sorry, you caught me
exactly
taking a drink. I was going to come in then, but I was just like, no, I'm just going to spit everything all over the place.
Delightful.
Oh, sorry, I'm now choking. Paul. Sorry,
you
guys.
see, I've just remembered why we do this live.
Yeah, I know. So, yeah, Paul, probably the funniest thing to come out the weekend is yet another round of #Tomo's excuses. They didn't get the calls, apparently, despite us only having one power play all game. And I seem to recall from somebody who told me they got another power play proper, late on in the third as well. So, you want to say anything on that?
Yeah, well...
That we won't get sued for?
Well, I'll try. If you watch it, it's pretty mystifying, unless, and this is my theory, though I've seen one or two other people say it as well. He's talking about, the referees not calling the hooking, the slashing, the holding, or I forget his exact words, but they were calling penalties on us, but not Sheffield. So maybe what he's actually saying is, look at all the stuff we got away with until the last 2 minutes. I mean, if you watch, again, like Tina, I've only watched the highlights, and unfortunately for Sheffield, with their super-duper cameras and slow-mos and everything, they show that the incident where Sauvé is hooked. And it's as blatant a hooking penalty as you ever want to see. Sheffield player puts his stick round Sauvé's foot and pulls. It just pulls his leg out from under him. It's blatant. So why he's moaning about that? Well, I know why he's moaning about that. He's just lost to his biggest rivals, and Tomo. I'll say one thing for him though. He actually said Galbraith had a good game, which is one of the few times I've ever heard Thompson say anything good about the opposition.
Well, he wants to. I mean, if you're facing 60 shots on an evening and you come out with a win, that's a blooming good effort.
You say that, Tina. I watched the 8-0 in Sheffield. The one where there was supposed to be no away fans.
I went to that as well.
I know you did.
Yeah, it was great.
The interview after that, all he talks about is how bad they were. There's no, they played well or whatever. It was just, we were rubbish, we were this, we were... So I want a reaction tomorrow. That didn't work. And all this and the other. So it's actually nice that just for once he said something nice about one of our players. But it's certainly, it's probably the thing that's worth watching most out of the whole of the highlights, really.
Yeah. I mean, for me, on the whole sort of penalties situation in that game, I haven't got a problem with us only being given one power play all game, because, quite frankly, our power play is painful to watch.
Oh yeah.
I really didn't care about that at all. It's quite. I can't remember which game it was. It was a couple of weeks ago. I actually yelled at Hicksy to stop giving penalties. Stop calling penalties on the opposition. I was just like, we don't want it. But yeah, it's funny. How, because I looked at the game sheet before I'd heard anything about Tomo's post-match comments, and I looked at the game sheet and I was like, blimey, we only got one power play all game. That's ridiculous. And then I heard somebody took a little snippet of his comments, about the we didn't get the calls, and it was one of those. I sort of sat down to listen to it mid-drink. And I nearly sort of spat my water out all over my keyboard. I just couldn't. I just couldn't. I mean, maybe perhaps because I've only watched that small snippet, maybe it's been taken out of context, but I can't see how. And it was it provided a source of light amusement for me, I have to say.
Okay, right. Well, unless either of you want to say anything more about that, we shall move on to last night's game away.
We're not on air anymore anyway now.
Don't say that.
No, don't say that, because whenever anything goes wrong, it's when I'm recording. So just stop, just stop right now. Let's move on and pretend like everything's fine, please.
That's Paul getting his revenge for the Edinburgh thing. So yes, last night Panthers travelled to the Manchester Storm, and unfortunately, once again, as we've seen many times this season, it was a late goal that proved Panthers out. Awful tonight. Sorry.
Undoing.
It was Panthers. The late goal conceded that basically cost us the game, leading 3-2, only to concede an equaliser something like 80 seconds from the end. I seem to have read somewhere before Manchester won it on a penalty shootout.
I think it was. I think it was actually less than that. I think we're talking more like 40 seconds. So it was within the final minute, I'm pretty sure. But
40 seconds.
But regardless, your point still stands.
Okay. And one thing that I do want to mention, obviously, David Clarke's had 3 strong games. I believe he got man of the match in all 3 games. So since he's announced his retirement, we will be doing a special podcast for Clarkey, but it's to do with we're having some troubles getting the gang together, so we're going to try and get that sorted.
Yeah, everybody
so
just
keep an eye out for that.
Everybody needs to just stop being busy. That just needs to happen. You just cancel your life plans and just everybody needs to just get on this podcast.
Clark, he deserves it.
On the subject of Clarke and retiring and getting this man of the match, it seems a bit of an extreme effort to stand and have his picture taken while holding an empty cardboard box. Regularly, Do you really have to retire to do that? I don't know. And why are the boxes always empty? But that's a different story.
I think it's something to do with they're not allowed alcohol on that's not sold by the arena or something. There'll be some daft rule about it. Or health and safety, so you don't drop a case of beer on a poor little girl that's presenting you man of the match. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, back to the game. By all accounts, it was a pretty even game to watch, and I know people that went up that actually did enjoy themselves, and it wasn't solely down to the chips in the old Tringham Arena. Well,
you say that, but there's nothing that quite compares to Hull's chip spice, is there, Ant?
No.
Sorry. I know you get emotional when we talk about Hull, but anyway, the game was actually a pretty good game, and we said on last week's podcast that given our positions in the league at the moment, Manchester are likely playoff opponents, so it was possibly a snippet of what's to come. There's obviously still some jostling for position to go on, but yeah, it was a good game. It's the surprising thing was that after scoring the 5 goals in total in the first period, that nothing else happened until the last minute of the game goals wise. I mean, that was pretty bonkers. I mean, both goalies had a good game. Garnett was he was absolutely outstanding. He was absolutely fantastic. It was a good night really. I mean, I'm a little bit disappointed that I could be wrong, but I don't recall seeing any of the under 23s. Gospel was backing up. I'm guessing that Galbraith earned a rest after facing 60 shots the previous night. But yeah, good game to watch. Lots, had lots in it, and despite the fact that Manchester are pretty, they're pretty well, solidified almost potentially, in their place in the table in second. They were still, absolutely putting 100% effort in. I mean, they had to win that game, and I think Guildford had to lose for them to get the Patton Conference title. But so obviously they still had something to play for. But it was a game that actually felt like it had purpose. And
Paul, Corey alluded to it. Maybe was it a touch of the Tomos that he was complaining about having to kill penalties all night, and I know we had a 5-on-3 against us in overtime, which I do know was reduced to a 5-on-4, but still that's quite a rare occurrence to have 2 penalties called against you in OT.
It is, although most of the times I've seen, but it's quite rare that the whole thing is played 3-on-3. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've not seen any of the game because Manchester haven't put the highlights out yet, and I'm too tired to buy a webcast. But I mean, he's right. So I can't comment, but he's right. But I mean, one of the comments we've had on the poll is that we need to be more disciplined. That we're giving away too many penalties. So maybe he was complaining about his own team as well.
Could be, and certainly need to tighten it up if we're going to do anything in the playoffs. But
yeah, well, the 2 penalties that led to the 5-on-3 in overtime. The first one was too many men. I mean, that's just blatant.
Typical, frankly.
Yeah, there's no getting away from that. That's too many men's too many men. I mean, even as a referee, when you are refereeing overtime, and the sort of unwritten rule of whistles go away for that 5 minutes, you can't ignore that. That's never happening. So yeah, that was a I'm trying to find the word, a pants penalty to take.
Yeah, I mean, it's it is an important thing that we've got to, like saying, if we're going into the playoffs, we've got to cut down on the penalties. We've got to cut down. We've got to try and stop this this capitulation and giving away late goals, because at the end of the day, that could cost us. You got 2 game series. An aggregate score over the 2, that is going to cost us if we can't stop a team, and hang on to it without taking penalties when somebody puts a bit of pressure on us.
Well, one of the things as well to do with that is that we score goals towards the beginning of a game traditionally. We sort of peter out towards the 3rd period, and it's not so much of a problem if you're conceding goals at the end of a game, as long as you're scoring them as well. And we're not really doing that. So that is something we definitely need to look at. We had opportunities on Sunday to score more goals, and I'm absolutely, I couldn't believe it. I sort of looked at the clock at towards the end of the second period, and it's like sort of 2.5-3 minutes to go, and I was just baffled. It's like, I can't believe that we've almost had we've had a period of hockey with no goals in the middle of it, and then the trend sort of continued on into the 3rd, and I did say sort of halfway through the 3rd, it's not going to stay at 3-2. They're going to get one back, and the little that little statistic that we've scored the least goals in the 3rd periods of a game, that was just niggling at me. So I couldn't believe for 1 minute that we were going to keep Manchester to 3-2, having had all the goals scored in the third period. I just didn't think that was going to happen at all.
I think Gareth at Fogey on Twitter agrees with you. He says that the match was the entire season in summary: early promise, last minute equaliser that shouldn't have happened, a 5-on-3 PK in OT to drive the fans insane, and a defeat.
Well, there we go. Can't summarise it better than that.
Scoring early and then sort of fading away is a bit like our season, isn't it? Most of our season.
It's not a re-record, not fade away for you. You old timers out there.
Oh wow, you've got to be of a certain age to remember that.
Yeah, but is it real or is it Memorex? That's what you got to ask. You're too young for that. Move on.
Hey, I can remember Betamax, but not Memorex.
I remember the one with Peter Murphy. That used to be in Bauhaus in the chair with the speakers blowing his hair back. Anyway,
you've lost me now.
Yeah.
Crack on. Let's have some comments.
Yes. Yeah. We've had one or two. Bearing in mind, this question for you both. Bearing in mind, we both. I'm as bad as Anne. Bearing in mind, we play Fife on Tuesday. Why didn't Nielsen play Tetlow in one of the games over the weekend?
Don't know. I wasn't there. Tina?
Well, I want to say he wasn't on the bench. I want to say he wasn't even named on the for the games. I could be wrong, but
or Bracknell?
Possibly. I mean,
they're playoffs, aren't they? So
yeah. So I mean, we from what I understand, we sort of get dibs on where Tetlow plays, but. Yeah, it could be there was a negotiation in at that. I don't know. That's an interesting one. I mean, I would expect to see him on Tuesday. I would expect to at least see him on the bench on Tuesday. But yeah, that's an interesting it's an interesting question, really.
Anything else, Paul?
Yeah, they've got one or two more. We beat Steelers. Enough said. A mention for Kelsall against Edinburgh. What a performance and a real prospect for the future. Tyler Seth and 2 goals.
Well, just picking on that, I know Jono highly touted him at the start of the season. So, based from the two of you,
sponsorship cheap.
Yeah, from the two of you that were at the game, does he look like the player that we thought we were getting at the start of the season?
I don't know if it's kind of what he, what we thought we were going to get, but he's definitely able. He knows where he needs to be. It's a bit like I would sort of rate his kind of his play on Tuesday on a similar sort of level as Tetlow when we first started playing him, a bit more a few weeks back. He's got the basics. He knows where he needs to be. And he got a couple of goals. So I mean, that's albeit it was against an understrength Edinburgh, but and that's saying something. But he got goals. I mean. And I've probably overused this example, but I can remember Ollie Bettridge's first game for the Panthers, and I'm quite happy to be corrected, but I believe he did get to the front of the net and nearly scored in his first game for the Panthers. I think it was something like 3 days after his 16th birthday or something along those lines, and he had maybe had like 3 shifts or something the whole game, but he did get to the front of the net and nearly scored, and it's it's that sort of awareness. He's got a good hockey head on his shoulders, and you can see the potential. That's the thing for somebody of his age. He's obviously very accomplished at the level that Swindon are playing at, because every time he's scoring, Panthers are retweeting Swindon's tweets, to say that Jordan Kelsall has scored a goal. But you can see that he has got potential at elite league level. So, if we're wondering where the next Robert Lakovic is coming from, perhaps, just to use an example, perhaps we don't need to look too much further than Jordan Kelsall.
I'd rather next David Clark, but yeah.
Well, it's just let's not be greedy. It can build up to that perhaps.
And one of the things that from the same very long comment, I've only picked highlights out of it, saying it was nice to see the senior members of the team trying to set him up for his hat trick.
Yes, they were very much so. There was a big effort on that.
Most shifts in the third period. So obviously, he's obviously a well liked player in the team, which is also good to see. Moving on to one final comment. Actually, it's two comments rolled into one. Wish fans would stop moaning. Loved the team attitude to get the young guys into the game against Edinburgh. Well, like we were saying before, if not then when. Can't understand why people thought the Panthers fans cheering Capitals was patronising. It was well-intentioned and sporting. I think, for me, I can sort of see both sides of that. I think, for me, it's not so much that the Edinburgh Capitals fans aren't grateful that somebody's supporting them. They just don't want to be seen as almost being felt sorry for. They want people to, why do we dislike teams? Because they do well against us. So, nobody dislikes the teams that we beat regularly. So, and I think that's part of it. So I don't know what you two think.
Sorry, go on, Ant. You've not an opportunity to go on. You go first.
Well, I was actually, when I first heard about it, I thought, "Oh, is this the start of the much touted, if you're on the cage, protest movement?" But then, knowing some of the people that were involved, it was a genuine. I think they were trying to show appreciation for the effort that the Caps were putting in, rather than it trying to be a patronising thing. And obviously, it's a struggle to get an atmosphere going in that arena the vast majority of the time. So anything would help, I suppose.
Grumpy old men like me that's causing the problem. You thought you got away with that one, didn't you?
Yeah, I think it was well intentioned, but I can understand why some Caps fans and some Panthers fans have taken umbrage to it. It's there's two sides to it. I thought it, as I say, I thought it was well intentioned, but you do have to be quite careful in delicate situations such as this. We've said many times that we do feel for the Capitals fans. You have to sort of tip your hat to those that are still going at the minute. Turning up, knowing that their team is probably going to take an almighty humping. That's got to be so disheartening. So yeah, it's a difficult one. I appreciate that the guys that went over there were just trying to give the Caps players a bit of a boost. It's not the players that need this that need the scorn. It's not the players that people need to be getting upset with. It's the management. And from what I understand, I don't believe any of the management of the Edinburgh Capitals were in the building on Tuesday night. It's a difficult one. It is a difficult one. But as I say, the intentions were completely innocent. But I think there's a lot of frustration in the Caps fan base.
Okay. Any more comments, Paul?
No, that's pretty much it.
Okay, so just a couple of standout stats from the weekend before we move on to Player of the Week. Our power play was 1 out of 6. Obviously, we hardly got any chances on Saturday anyway. Our PK, we only conceded 1 goal off on 15 opportunities, so that's promising. As far as a PK goes.
I think that does sort of answer Nielsen's comment, though, doesn't it?
Well, yeah. Well, we conceded twice as many penalties as we got.
Yeah.
Power plays. Yeah, but at least the PK is standing strong coming into the tail end of the season. Top of the points charts, we have Brown, DeLego, Phillips and the Mock on 5 points each, with Clark and Vescuvo on 4, and a bunch of others below them. And obviously Jordan Kelsall with his first 2 goals of the season. So based on that poll, 3 games, Player of the Week, over to you.
Yep. Oh, I knew I should have kept looking at the spreadsheet. Right, in 3rd place, Luke Pither. In 2nd place, a well-deserved 2nd for Jordan Kelsall. And in 1st place, by an absolute stream.
I wonder who that's going to be.
I wonder. Brett. No. It's Patrick Galbraith.
Once again. How many awards is that now?
A lot. Yeah. I think if you like another player, I'd start voting regularly in Player of the Week, because I think Galbraith could well end up with Player of the Season. But we've got another 2, possibly.
Well, it depends how we progress, doesn't it?
I said possibly. Yes.
Well, we've definitely got 2.
Unless you're going and watching them on a golf course to see how well they do that. But
we're not playing Steelers again in golf, are we?
No. Oh God, remember that? Oh dear.
Thinking about that the other day.
Blinding idea that was. But thinking of that, we asked an extra question this week about whether you think Panthers will make the playoff final weekend or not. And an overwhelming majority of you think that they will. Almost 2 to 1. I think it was like 65%, 35% think that they will make the finals. So there is still some, despite the things you see and read, there is still some optimism out there.
Well, hashtag believe or something.
No, don't start all that.
I forget when that was, but that was so 2000 and whatever it was. It was you know what? It was when we beat Giants, wasn't it, in the cup final, when we were about 25-0 down, and we came back and won in overtime, 26-25. Fantastic game. I enjoyed it, obviously. Moving on to a lot of other news from the past week. Some sort of, I'm not going to go through the results, other than probably the biggest one. The Cardiff Devils finally got over the line and were crowned Elite League Champions with a 3-2 away win in Belfast on Friday night. Something about winning league titles in Belfast on a Friday. Any tears this time, Paul?
You see, I didn't cry before. I didn't cry when Belfast won it against Steelers in 2012 because I was there. I didn't cry. I wasn't the one crying, huh? I wasn't the one who had to leave the game before the end because they were getting that excited about it. I watched the whole thing.
I wasn't crying, you were.
The Belfast fan who sat next to me, she didn't last the whole game. I don't know what I did, but never mind. So she left before the end. But in fact, I can't remember her going. Perhaps I was just celebrating too much.
5 years ago, how times change.
Yeah, tell me about it. But congratulations to the Devils. The thing with league title is that the best team always wins it, and they've been the best team and close on the worst team. Actually, thinking about it, I've seen in Nottingham this year. In last time they came, they had a particularly off night, but the rest of the time they've showed the rest of the league what to do. They've showed all the people who claim that playing in Europe is a distraction to your season that there are ways and means around it. So, fair play to them.
Yes, it can be done. It can be done.
And it's not like they bombed out either of the Champions League. They won 2 games. Should have been both of them in regulation, Tina. And it was, I think, from top to bottom, the Cardiff Devils are the team that everyone would like to be. I think with Kelman in charge, they've got somebody who is very savvy at what he does. He's a very astute businessman, but on top of that, he knows how much the fans mean to the club.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think with, Cardiff's recent trouble, let's take it back a few years. Just prior to Kelman and the ownership group coming in and rescuing the Cardiff Devils from the brink after Reagan and Pope nearly absolutely decimated the club, the fan base, and there was
trying to get
left.
shut down.
So, but that was critical for them. That was absolutely critical. It was a horrible situation. It must have been awful, being involved in that situation. I mean, it was horrible for us looking from the outside in, and now they have a successful team. They have a good ownership group. They have a brand spanking new arena that probably needs another 1,000 seats in it, but whatever. They're getting sell-out after sell-out, so they must be happy. But yeah, I mean they've had a couple of wobbles over the course of the season, and a few people ready to sort of poke holes in the Devils' structure in the team with a few untidy results, but they've gone the distance. The old cliche, it's a marathon, not a sprint. They knew that. They haven't panicked at any point. I'm sure that there's been a few cross words said after a defeat here and there, but they've accomplished it. Back-to-back league championships. The table does not lie.
Okay, and the other piece of significant news from a lesser happy perspective is that the Dundee Stars, after putting on what was somewhat of a late run, unfortunately they've fallen short and they will now not be able to qualify for the playoffs. So that final spot goes between Coventry or Braehaed. And I'm sure we might talk about Coventry and Braehaed in our preview bit shortly on. Just some other random news from around the league. Long-time Edinburgh Capitals backup goalie Kevin Forshaw has announced that he's going to retire at the end of this season, which is our game on Sunday. So it would be interesting to see if he gets any ice time, Tina.
Yeah, well, if it's going to be his last game, then why the heck not? Give poor old Jordan McLaughlin the night off, because he's been absolutely under siege since Beskar Awani got injured. He's mainly been the one who's had to step in because I believe Forshall is one of those who has a day job and can't really travel to a lot of the away games. So he's sort of he's handcuffed in the role that he can kind of play for the Capitals. But if you've got the opportunity, and if you might as well, it's the last game of the season. They're not going to play any further part in in the games this season. That is going to be the Capitals' last game as well. Why the heck not? You might as well. He's been an ever-present player for the Caps for some time. So yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure we'll sort of talk about a certain backup goalie in similar sort of terms as we go on. But yeah, why not?
And Paul, I should have mentioned this when I was talking about Dundee. A bit happier times for them. Omar Pacha has signed a 3-year deal to carry on as coach and general manager. Positive for you?
I think so. I do. Yeah. I mean, it gives him now a chance. He's got those 3 years to, put a real sort of plan into place. And I like Pasha a lot. I like the sort of the teams he puts out. He seems to get the best. I mean, he's never really coached anywhere that's had a massive budget. But he got Hull to the playoffs, I think, and unfortunately Dundee have just missed out this year. But he got that run going, and you could also say he got them in a position where they had to get the run going to try and make it. But he's he seemed. I mean, I wouldn't have been. This will make me more popular than normal, but I wouldn't have been upset if he'd have been in consideration for our job. Because, give him a chance with that hopefully bigger budget, and to see what he could do. Because I like what see him done, and I've met him, and he's a nice bloke. A really nice bloke,
and that would fit in perfectly.
Yeah,
but you do touch on it. He does build committed teams, if nothing else. So this desire that a portion of the Panthers fan base want to see above all else, that should be full on for a Patcher team. And I wish him all the best for the next 3 years in Dundee, except against us. And then finally.
Obviously, that's a nice link, man. Shame we've got to do the Braehaed game first, isn't it? That'd have been perfect.
So this coming week we've got the Fife Flyers, our Scottish foursome this weekend, and starting with tomorrow, we play our last home game of the season against the Fife Flyers. Now, neither of you were there at the last triple header, so you're probably not going to understand what I'm going to say here. But now, do you think we'll be allowed to play a contact game tomorrow, or is it going to be, touch each other on the hips, touch rugby style?
I do recall what you said following the last triple header answer. Yes, that does. Yeah. I would. I mean, the thing is, it's in our barn, So if you are of the belief that the referees can be swayed by a crowd, then surely it's going to be us. But who knows? I don't subscribe.
I can't see our crowd doing much swaying, to be honest.
Well, I don't know. you don't know how loud I can shout and how well the referees can hear me from where I sit.
Well, I can pretty much guess. Yeah. At least the first bit, anyway.
Yeah, it's good fun. But yeah, I don't subscribe to that. But I think it's going to be it's going to be an interesting game. The interesting part for me is that we haven't actually beat Fife yet this season. And that is that's the part that concerns me most about Tuesday's game. We need to continue with the momentum that this week has brought us. This past week has brought us. We need the momentum going in to playoffs. If we don't win anything this week, I don't believe Braehaed can catch us on points. So at the very least, we'll be 7th.
You've just reminded me of something.
Go on.
Sorry, one of the comments was, and you can once I've read this, you'll see why we do let people enter them anonymously. Because it says, "I'm now looking forward to what I hope will be 8 points to close off the season and give us a boost to the playoffs." With a thumbs up at the end. It must be from Lacko.
8 points. Wow.
I like the.
There's the dream.
The optimism, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows where 8 will take us? 8 points will take us.
Yeah.
Not to 8.
It's been a long day.
Yeah, I would say it's going to be it's going to be more of the same. Fife have had a bit of a downturn in results, possibly mainly due to the fact that their starting netminder Andy Isles has been out, and they have had to call upon Jordan Marr, who by all accounts has been playing very well, but the results haven't been coming. So, if Isles is still injured, then it's our opportunity to maybe benefit from that. You can't do any more than that. You have to play to whatever team shows up. You have to counter that. I would very much like us to not be embarrassed to score on the backup netminder. No, Gary, that's not going away. It's just, I don't care. I don't care if he's a backup.
Go Go on, Tina.
I guess I don't care that he's a backup netminder. I want us to score on him. If we have the opportunity, then blooming well put the puck in the back of the net.
That should be the case regardless of who we're playing. But
exactly.
They did have 2 good wins at the weekend, having a St Patrick's Day celebration of their own in Belfast on Saturday, and then obviously ending Dundee's playoff hopes on Sunday. So they're not to be taken lightly. And like you say, we've not beaten them yet this season, so we owe them. Some Scottish fans of ours would say we've done them. It's our fault that they're in this poor run of form. Hey ho, I don't really care.
Last time I looked, it was a contact sport.
Exactly. So Friday, and the 2 of you are going up. I understand you're hoping to do some bits over the weekend with some of the other guys. So Friday, it's our trip to our sister club, the Braehaed clan, and if you're certain section of the Coventry fan base, you're probably looking at that and thinking, oh, Panthers are just going to roll over and let them win. Paul, really? Is that seriously going to happen just because we happen to have the same overall owner?
No, it's not. That's not the reason. It's the reason it'll happen is because we are the Nottingham Panthers. We do things like that every now and again.
You're nothing special. We lose every week. Sorry.
Oh, that's so kind of you to say that about me, Tina. Thank you. I'm nothing. I'm going to change my Twitter to that. He's nothing special, Tina Taylor. Sorry, Cat's Whiskers TV, the First Lady of Cat's Whiskers TV, Tina Taylor. No, I'm sorry, but to me, that saying, "Oh, it's a conspiracy," then that Neil Black will want the extra money or whatever. It's all a bit tinfoil helmet territory. Frankly, it's grassy knolls. It's all the conspiracy theories. I can't think of any because I don't really pay much attention to them. I expect a game to be played properly. At the end of the day, I've paid 18 quid. Well, I've paid more than 18 quid because certain people haven't paid me for their tickets yet.
Well, I did ask. I could have transferred it to you, but you said you wanted cash.
I did say just put the money in the first round, didn't I? On the second. And the third. But no, look. At the end of the day, I've paid my money to go up there. I want to see Panthers put a performance in, and to suddenly think that, well, it sounds to me like you're making an excuse for your own team being there. Frankly, it's if being first in the league doesn't lie, being 8th and 9th doesn't lie either. So I just hope the game is played properly, as I'm sure it will be.
Exactly. I mean, we do have good form against Braehaed. The last 20 games, we've only lost 4 and drawn 1 and won the rest. So the odds are heavily in our favour. So fingers crossed that carries on. And into Saturday, when we see Omar Patch's Dundee Stars, Tina, it's a lovely rink to go to. It's very friendly. Anything in particular looking forward to other than baiting a certain number 18?
Yeah, easy access to the bar.
And pre-ordering your drinks before the game for the period breaks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, no, okay, I agree with you. I like Dundee's rink. I think my first Scottish triple header, it involved Dundee at some point. I'm pretty certain that it did. And yeah, You what? Sorry.
Must have been a good weekend if you're not entirely sure.
Well, I've been on a few Scottish triple headers, so that they've all been good weekends. Sometimes hockey, despite the hockey, rather than because of it. But yeah, it's a good rate. It's the thing that I have liked seeing this season. Well, not seeing in person, but I've liked seeing the attendances that have increased. You know, they've been doing some real work, and you know they've done masses of ticket deals to try and get the bums on seats. Because one thing that I have bemoaned Dundee for in the past is that you know they've got this you know, this lovely rink, bags of potential, and you know, if they can get the people in, if they can get the bums on seats, they would be able to perhaps have the kind of team that that could really do well in the league. You know, they have the potential if they can drum up the business, if they can get enough people interested, if they can get people in, paying their ticket money, they have the potential, you know, to compete not just in their own conference, but you know, with other teams. And you know, they need that rink deserves that, and I think Omar Pasha deserves it. You know, he's tried really hard with them this season, and one of the challenges they've had is only having the 3 lines. Because they can't afford to have, you know, the full team that everybody else has got. So they've been competing in a 4-line league with 3 lines, and they've had a few injuries here and there. You know, they've had a couple of people leave. There's been a bit of a bit of player movement, and you know they've done okay, but I think the most promising thing for them is the bums on seats, and you know, hopefully, despite the fact that they haven't really got anything to play for, hopefully the people will keep coming, and you know, we'll have a nice buoyant crowd when we go up there on Saturday.
Well, I think one of the things as well, in all 3 of the games we've got this weekend, is that we are playing teams on their last home game. And you know, who doesn't want to go out, no matter how bad your season? Who doesn't want to go out on a high? So, I mean, obviously, Braehaed have got something to play for. But even if they hadn't, they're playing us, and despite the fact that without us, they wouldn't exist. I just want to be contentious tonight, don't know what it is. They're gonna want to beat us, and you know, Dundee are going to want to beat us, put a show on, you know, one last time, and Edinburgh are going to want to beat us. You know, I mean, obviously teams always do that anyway. I'm not saying they don't, but it is that last game of the season. You know, go out on a high.
I mean, that segues perfectly into Sunday's game.
Oh, you see,
it's you can tell you've been doing this longer than I have. Yeah. So, guys, it's the 3rd game in 3. It is Edinburgh away. It's going to be cold. You know, it's going to be cold. Is it going to be another glorified training session?
Oh, I'm going to take my beer jacket. It'll be fine.
You're not coming back till Monday then?
No, not at all. Not at all.
That's probably the way to go. Paul, is there anything in particular you're looking forward to in Edinburgh? The castle, maybe? Locking Tina up in one of the dungeons?
No, she's driving.
Yeah, they need me. This is all part of my cunning plan.
Yeah, I don't know.
John Obi-Wan.
A swift pint in the Roseburn bar before the start of the game, perhaps deciding to stay in there based on how good or bad the 2 previous nights have been. You look at it and you think, well, you want a victory. I just want a decent weekend. I think, it'd be great to win, but it's it's the last chance, and the last chance is the end of the season, the last chance to do something like this, to go a bit loopy before apart from the playoffs, before the summer starts, isn't it?
It is, and to be fair, it is normally a decent trip, whether you're going on your own or with Panthers travel. Safe journey to everybody making the trip, and make sure you do come back, because we do have a playoff game next weekend to sort out. So,
and if John sticks a microphone in your face, say something intelligent.
If it's a Saturday night in Dundee,
which is more than we ever do.
Might be more along the lines of... but
night or a Sunday night.
Well, yeah, true. So, I understand you will be doing Ask TCW on Friday morning. Is that going to be a live thing, or is it going to be recorded?
Well, I think it's all a to be discussed kind of thing. Yeah, it's this. If it all goes wrong, all you need to know is that it's Jono's fault.
Johnny's idea, just for once, it isn't my idea. The idea is to do it live. I think we'll probably be asking for questions. Well, I'm asking for questions now. If you got a question, send them in. We'll be recording it like normal through Spreaker, so it'll be available afterwards anyway. But yeah, I mean, it's a long old journey. Up there, I don't know which way Tina's decided we're going. M1, A1, across the A66, and then
I'm sorry. I am one of those useless people who puts a sat nav on and just goes, right, tell me where to go.
Fair enough.
From personal standpoint, I would recommend that because there is shed loads of roadworks on the M6. So if you can go A1 and then left at Scotch Corner.
And one of the things we want to do as well, talking about recommendations, is because I mean it's a long time since I've been on a Scottish trip, nearly 7.5 years. So we want to go and have a good time. So we want to know the places that you recommend to go and get something to eat, and more importantly, if I'm honest, the places that you recommend to go and have a decent drink. So, send in like, the usual at Cats Whiskers TV. We haven't got a hashtag for it. We might think one up. But, send in your recommendations, and we'll include those. And we'll stick them out on Twitter. We'll include them in the...
Hashtag beer me.
Oh, dear.
Hashtag beers of Scotland.
Oh, there we go. I think we have a winner.
I was trying to go for something shorter.
Yeah.
It's all right.
Seriously, send us your recommendations, and if you do, and you see four strange, bedraggled people suddenly appear, then that's probably us.
Everybody's got 280 characters now, so it's fine.
So send us plenty.
Yeah.
And obviously,
I get balls to doing the same pub all night. Always am.
You will be doing review podcasts after the game as well, so that means there won't be this show next Monday. So our next regular show will be after the playoff quarterfinals, I guess. So unless you've got anything else you want to talk about, I think we're done.
Yeah, just to say that what we'll try and do as well is record some other bits and pieces on the road. And then, if we can, we'll stitch them all together and put them out. Put all the three sort of post-game reviews and all these other little bits out in, in a podcast like this. Just one big lump. I'll try and record Jono snoring because the rest of the world needs to hear that.
Are you absolutely sure about that?
Yeah, because I'll be awake.
I'm not sure I want to hear it.
Just to give everybody a flavour of what it's like being on the road with us.
Yay.
Okay. I really nothing more that I could possibly add to that. So we will hopefully get
anyway. Everybody's snoring.
We will hopefully get something out as a special for Clarkey over the next week or so. So keep an eye out for that. And obviously, yes, send in your questions and comments to the at Cast Whiskers on the TV on the Twitter. So, Paul Barn, it's time for you to say goodbye.
Goodbye.
And Tina Taylor, it is time for you to say cheerio.
TTFN.
Oh, git. All right, and that's from me. My name is Ant, and that is Monday's review podcast. Done. Ta-ta.
This edition of the Cat's Whiskers podcast was brought to you by the Bunkers Hill Hockley.